Last game at home against Crystal Palace, Trent should be the captain. Nothing that Trent does with his life, you are allowed to have an opinion on. It's his life, it's his career.
If I was a Forest fan, I would be disappointed, but also he embarrassed his manager. If I'm Nuno, I'm like, what are you doing?
I wonder where Sir Keir Starmer goes from here. Now he's sounding like a candidate for reform.
Hello and welcome back to Whisper It Loudly. I'm Hugh Woozencroft alongside Darren Lewis, assistant editor for the Mirror newspaper and Channel 4 and Blackademics, Jordan Jarrett-Bryan, all set for another juicy conversation. We'll be touching on Forest, Liverpool, Keir Starmer moving to the right, and we'll also talk about mentoring a little bit later as well. So another packed show for you. Trent Alexander-Arnold, of course, announcing he would be leaving the club, but is kind of the worst kept secret in football for quite some time, likely to be heading to Real Madrid, although that hasn't been confirmed. But I guess Trent, you'll never walk alone was something that doesn't matter to some, because when he came on, he was booed by some fans. When he touched the ball, he was booed by some fans. He was treated appallingly, to be perfectly frank. A player who's won so much for the football club, who's done so much for the football club, who joined the football club as a youngster 20 years ago. So, Darren, I'll start with you on your emotions. How sad was it to see the Liverpool fans treating him like that?
Yeah, it was sad. It was sad. I can't lie. It's sad when any club does it. I remember Arsenal's fans booing Emmanuel Abui to the point
This is,
of
by the
tears.
way, let's be clear. This is the typical Liverpool response. It's sad when
It's
everyone
sad.
else does it. It's immediately referring to Arsenal. It's sad when anyone does it. No one. The what about it? It's unbelievable. I haven't spoken to a single Liverpool fan who hasn't immediately reflected on the actions of another club. Now we're talking about Liverpool here, my friend. I'll repeat the question. How sad was it to see the Liverpool fans treat one of their own like that? Go ahead.
The reason I was I made the reference to Abui is because I remember interviewing him afterwards, and him talking about how devastated he was when it happened. And I also remember interviewing Trent last season and him talking about his commitment to Liverpool to the point where he set up his after academy for young people who didn't make it in the game, to give them a chance, to give them skills, to find them jobs, to give something back to the red half of Merseyside, actually to all of Merseyside. And so to see that booing, which was almost some people say it was pantomime booing, some people say they didn't really mean it. The fact was he was being booed. And the biggest thing I thought watching it, and this is why Emmanuel Abui also came to mind, but other players did as well, is because the next time a player weighs up what he should do in terms of his future, I wonder if he might look at that and think, you can give 20 years to a club, you can help win them 2 titles, you can help win them the Champions League, you can be the leading assist maker as a defender in your time, and yet you will still get booed if you decide that you want to go to another club. And I just felt it was incredibly sad, and that the repercussions of it might go beyond Anfield, and it might go a lot further afield.
I did see an article suggesting that Liverpool as a football club lost a little bit of the great respect that it holds in football by treating Trent Alexander-Arnold like that. Darren, I'll stay with you. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, actually. I don't know. I mean, it's... I don't know. I don't know. I thought more broadly about it. I didn't really think in terms of, do I respect Liverpool more or less in that moment? They're a storied club whose fans are part of the modern era of being angry and influenced by social media. And let's not tar all of the fans with the same brush. It was a sizable number we heard. We can't kid ourselves, but it wasn't all of them. And so this conversation can't be around an entire fan base, because it's not fair to that entire fan base. But we are in an era where people are refusing to accept that a player has the right, when he comes to the end of his contract, to decide where he wants to go. People don't accept it, and there's not really much you can do about that.
I will do a bit of whataboutery just to show a bit of balance, first of all, because I think the way large parts of the Arsenal fan base treated Arsene Wenger, as an example. I mean, I wanted Arsene Wenger to
Granit
leave the
Xhaka.
club years before he did. Yeah, Granit Xhaka was a slightly different example, but I bring up Wenger because there's an example of someone that's done a lot for the club, and the way he was spoken about by some section of the Arsenal fan base was absolutely disgraceful. I wanted Wenger to leave. I thought we should have left 3, 4, 5 years before he did. So I wanted him to go, but the way he was spoken about and treated was it was inhumane. It was disgraceful. The way that some of the United fans have spoken about the likes of Jesse Lingard and Paul Pogba was so personal and so disrespectful. I thought it was just beyond foul. I heard phrases like, Paul Pogba's a cancer. Get the cancer out of our club. Them kind of phrases used by United fans. It's like, what are you doing here, right? And I'm sure I could go through every other club and talk about other players as well. So I want you have that context that Liverpool fans aren't unique in treating one of their own in a really poor manner, right? But I think Liverpool fans have let themselves down massively. And weirdly enough, some Liverpool fans that I actually quite respect and quite like have been, I think, deliberately decided to try and not see the other side of this argument here. We discussed last week on the pod what the reasons why we think Trent wants to go, and the reasons why we think it's a good reason that he should go. New country, new language, new culture, new league. He's won everything he's won at his boyhood club. New ambitions. I'm all for that. This is the guy that is probably the most decorated player that football club has produced in its history. Correct me if I'm wrong. Can you think of another player to come out of that club that has won what he's won?
They have a few that have won. They have a few that have won
they've got a few that
several
have won.
European
Yeah.
Cups. Yeah.
No, from
Yeah.
Liverpool.
A lot of league
No,
titles
one
in the
of their
80s.
own.
In the Premier.
Oh, out of the academy.
of their
So I
own.
see.
Yeah.
Out of the academy. Yeah, I see. I
One
can't
of
think of an
their own.
academy player, but they must have had. They must have had an
Yeah.
academy player in the 80s team who's won
But
a
your
few
point
European Cups, a few leagues.
being-
Yeah.
Okay,
He must
someone in the comments. Someone in the comments can correct me if I could be wrong, but to my memory, he's the most decorated Liverpool product that I can remember. This is the guy that was part of one of the most iconic matches against Barcelona. He did that cute, intelligent free kick that was a big part of that comeback. This is a guy that arguably scored the goal that sealed the title a couple of weeks ago. This is a guy that has blessed the Premier League. Forget Liverpool, blessed the Premier League with some of his crosses, deliveries, striking of the ball, free kicks. He's been a joy to watch. This is a guy that is one of their own. He walks the streets of Liverpool. He knows what it's like to go through. We all know. We've had Marcia Lewis Skelly on the podcast talking about how difficult it is to get an academy player, to come through the club. The stats. I think it's like 0.0004% chance of making it as a pro player, let alone to play for your boyhood club. The pressures of playing for your club. We heard Jamie Carragher speaking a few weeks ago about when you're a local player, there's more responsibility on you. And he was talking through the prism of the likes of Marcus Rashford and Steven Gerrard. And so to come through all of that and not only make it pro at one of the biggest clubs in the world, be a key component, not a fringe player.
Phil Neal.
He's not a fringe player. He's a key component in a Premier League, two Premier League wins, a European Cup win and more. And then for him to come on the pitch and boo him. I'm not necessarily anti-booing. I'm not an anti-boo fan. I think fans have the right to boo. I've booed once in my life. I'm not anti-booing. But to boo him for the choice he's made, I thought was so poor. Touches the ball, boo, boo. And I heard a fan on the radio the other day, yesterday, saying that he was at the game and he said that it wasn't mixed. There's reports that it was mixed. He said, no, this is a Liverpool fan, by the way. No, it wasn't mixed. It was 70-30 in terms of percentage of those, but he said it was overwhelming fans booing him. It's so poor. And the rationale behind Liverpool fans of, oh yeah, but you guys just don't get it. You don't get it. I just think it's poor. And my final point would be this rhetoric that Liverpool have this special bond with their football team that no other fan has with their club. I just think that's been shattered now. I didn't believe it anyway, but it's been shattered because one of your own, forget a Liverpool player, one of your own, that's how you're treating. No, I think to answer your question, Hugh, I think the perception from other fans about Liverpool as a club and their relationship with their fan base, I think has been tarnished. They've let themselves down massively with this situation.
You make a valid point in so much as it will be hard now. It used to be the case for a long time that they were able to look at other clubs and their fans and maybe say they're not as loyal as they are, but it's going to be hard now because rival fans will look and say, look at that. And what are you going to be able to say back?
The thing that disappoints me most in the conversation is, and I've heard it a lot on TV and radio this week, is paying Liverpool fans have a right to boo. A right to boo. And I'm like, what? I've heard that from professionals, from ex-pros, from people who are respected, dignified broadcasters. Our Liverpool fans have a right to boo because they pay for a ticket. No, they don't. No, they don't. And let me explain to you. If you imply that because you've paid some money, you're allowed to treat someone. So if you pay a little bit more, what else are you allowed to do? So if you travel over from America every single week to watch Liverpool, what you're allowed to verbally abuse him, yeah? And if you own the club, you're allowed to spit on him. And if you're the manager, there's no right. Now let me rephrase it. They're entitled to do what they want, and they'll be judged by what they do. You're entitled to do what you want as a fan. Cool, I don't mind that language, but there's no right to boo someone, because what we're implying then is, do you have a right to tell him what to do with his career? Because what do you mean you got a right? You ain't got a right. Nothing that Trent does with his life, you are allowed to have an opinion on. It's his life, it's his career. As a fan, you're entitled to say what you like. You can't say it to him. So if you see Trent in the street, you're a Liverpool fan, or because I pay for a ticket, Trent, you should have stayed. You're going to tell him that to his face.
It's an interesting point, Hugh. So this is an interesting point you've made there. So do you think people have a right to boo a poor performance versus a decision? Because they're booing his decision, but are you saying that if someone is performing to an extremely low level, fan doesn't have the right to vent their frustration in the form of booing?
My point is, you're entitled to boo if you want to. You're entitled to, as a fan of the football club. You're entitled to voice your frustrations. You don't have a right to do that because you paid for a ticket. There's no right. There's no, so you didn't pay. So because you, imagine, let me put it in this context. So all the Liverpool fans that don't pay for tickets, they're not allowed to have a say. That's my point. There's no, I paid so I get to say, but you didn't pay. There is none of that. You're entitled to voice your concern.
Help me out here. So there's a difference between being entitled to versus the right to.
Yes. Because the implication, if I have a right to abuse you or boo you or whatever it is, right? It implies that I have some ownership over you. I'm entitled to tell you what to do in that case. No, you're not. No one's entitled to tell him what to do with his life. None of us have a right to tell. Because I'm a Liverpool fan, doesn't mean I have a right to tell someone else what to do with their life. Trent Alexander-Arnold is an employee of Liverpool Football Club. That's it. Last question on it, by the way. Should Trent Alexander-Arnold play for Liverpool again? Should Arne Slot have him on the pitch, possibly being booed for the next couple of games? That's the only other thing. And I think some people have said also, Liverpool fans saying he shouldn't be at the parade. Shouldn't be at the parade, So those are the questions. That's a final question on it. Should Trent be involved in everything, all the festivities between here and the end of the season? Jordan?
Can I go first quickly? Yeah, before Darren goes. Just briefly for me, I've changed my mind on this. I initially was of the mindset that he should be involved. He's earned the right to be involved. He's their best right back, and if he's fit, you play him. And from his perspective, he will want to play in those last two games for the club that he loves as a send-off. However, it's become clear that it's going to be so toxic in those last 2 games, I don't know who wins out of him playing. I don't know if the fans get anything out of it. They don't need to win those games. They don't need to play their best team. And I'm not even sure it would be a pleasant experience for him or his teammates. He came on the weekend, guys. Within 4 minutes, Arsenal scored. There's no coincidence for me in the timing of him coming on, being booed, and us scoring. That's not a coincidence, in my opinion. So if he's going to, unless Liverpool fans, all forums decided, look, guys, we don't like him going, but last 2 games, you haven't got to cheer him, but let's just hold it down with the booze. 2 games, let the guy go. Let's hold it. Unless I've had that discussion internally, it's going to be so horrible and toxic. I don't know who wins out of that. It'll be a horrible experience for the fans. It'll be a horrible experience for the players. And I think it'll be a horrible experience for him. He won't enjoy his last 2 games. So I'm actually in the mindset now that I would just have him on the bench. He should be part of the celebrations, but in terms of the games, I don't see what the win is here for him playing.
Listen, last game at home against Crystal Palace, Trent should be the captain, as far as I'm concerned. No, I'm not even joking. And I think Arne Slot and Liverpool should send a message that we do respect what this player has given us. There's only one club in the world. There's only one club in the world that's, in our opinion, that we understand is bigger than Liverpool, and that's the biggest club in the world in Real Madrid, and that we wish him well. This guy's given incredible service. He should be captain in the last game. He should be captain. He should get a great fanfare from the fans. And I don't care.
Won't.
Listen, even if he gets booed, I think it should set the tone, and Liverpool should set the tone for who they are as a football club, that says just because fans boo, it doesn't detract from the achievements of this player, and it doesn't affect how we choose a team. This is a serious outfit. You think you boo one of our players, so that's it, we just drop him for the rest of the season because you booed? No. Come on now. We're trying to get as many points as possible. If we believe he's the best right back in the team, then he's going to play. But what I'm saying is, in that final game, listen to me. I would make him captain. I'll bring him off on 70 minutes. If you want to boo, boo. If you want to clap, clap. No, seriously. But this guy should get his farewell to the service that he's given, the levels that he's performed at. It's crazy to me that people would even say, don't play him. Don't play him. Do you know, as a footballer, those extra 2 appearances where someone says you made 450 appearances, whatever it is, versus 448, it makes a difference, you know. Players want to be able to say they got everything. When they say they got everything out of their career at a club, that means every time they had the chance to step on the pitch and wear the shirt proudly, they took that opportunity. They didn't sit in the stands like a coward. I hope Trent is out there, and I hope to God the Liverpool fans give him a fantastic send-off in that final game. All the conversation around whether he stayed or not, the fact is he's leaving. He's leaving. So in a couple of weeks, I hope they've accepted it more and they can sit back and say, fair play to the lad, he's done good.
It's interesting. I thought one thing on Sunday, but I've actually come round to thinking your way now, Hugh. Because initially I did think, and it's a general thing really, if a player basically says they want to leave, then in general terms, let's say, great, let's draw a line under it, you've been fantastic. We understand you want to go, be involved in the celebrations at the end, but let's play someone who's going to pick up the baton from the start of from pre-season, going into the start of next season. But I actually have to admit, I can see what you're saying in so much as Slot's been really strong in saying, I will continue to play Trent. Trent has done nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. He's made a decision for his career. If anyone's dropped the ball, it's the club. Fans are not economists. It's for the club to suck up the fact that they could have got as much as £70 million for him had they decided to sell him when it was clear that he wasn't going to sign a new contract, and they decided not to. So as far as the club is concerned, they're the ones who should be thinking, we've made a mistake here. But as far as Trent's concerned, when the club hadn't offered him a contract and Real Madrid saw an opening and they took it, how can you blame him for that, given what he's done for the club? And even if he hadn't done that for the club, you know, he's been a committed player who has given his best years as a footballer and grown up with Liverpool Football Club. And I just think that it should be the case that it ends with respect. It ends with a mark, as you say, maybe the captaincy, maybe the armband for that game in a defiant show that Liverpool will be here regardless. You know, we've lost big players before and we've moved on. But we always do things the right way. And Liverpool are famed for doing things as a club the right way. And there's a distinction between the club and obviously the people who were intent on booing. But I think as a club, they will want to continue doing things the right way and give him the respect he deserves on his final day for the club.
I'm going to talk about Nottingham Forest. Yeah, Nottingham Forest, they don't get their flowers enough. And in fact, some people have started to put negative words around their name. They look like in the Premier League, they're slipping away from a place in the Champions League. Looks very unlikely now. And after their draw with Leicester at home at the weekend, the club's owner was on the pitch remonstrating with their manager, Nuno Espirito Santo. It is a moment that I think many people, many football fans were angered, felt it was disrespectful to a manager who has overachieved this year, who many felt were going to be in a relegation battle. They will, for sure now, be heading into European football of some description. But how big is the disappointment of missing out possibly on the Champions League for that football club? And we'll answer the question as to whether an owner should be on the pitch remonstrating with the team's manager at any stage, let alone at Nottingham Forest. Jordan, I'm going to start with you for this one. And I'll answer the question on the disappointment of missing out on the Champions League first. Apparently, we can't tell fans how to think. I was about to say, how should the Forest fans think? But that's been banned in recent weeks.
Don't worry, I will, Hugh. Don't worry about that. I will tell fans I'll give my opinion on that. Listen, if they've worked hard to be in a position whereby Champions League football is even a possibility, all right. Forest weren't even in the Premier League 2 or 3 years ago, so to now go from that, and I think at the start of the season, many people had them in their bottom 3 to go down, possibly. So to go from those expectations to, they've not made a late run for the Champions League. They've been in that Champions League bracket for half the season. I mean, some people, I don't. I mean, Darren, I think, flirted it a few months ago. They were outsiders as contenders for the titles. And I'm a bit far for me. But the point is, they've been in. I'm sure he mentioned a few months back.
He's always going to catch a stray. He's always going to catch a stray.
The point I'm making is that they've worked hard to be in and around a position whereby Champions League football can be, can be achieved. Should they be disappointed? If I was a Forest fan, I would be disappointed. But also, I think it's about, for them, hopefully a journey whereby if they do miss out on the Champions League this season, they can build. It might actually, they might not want to hear this, but it might be a blessing in disguise in that you go into the Europa League, you can bring players in of that level. Forest, they've got money, they've got backing. Maybe they can't buy the top echelon European players, but maybe they can buy the tier below that and they can make a really good fist of trying to win the Europa League. If United or Spurs can do it, then, why can't Nottingham Forest? And then that could be the basis of, next season, okay, maybe top 5 might be a stretch, but maybe European football again. And then you build. Maybe going too far too soon actually might be a bad thing. So they won't want to hear that because we know the big party is the Champions League, but it might in a weird way serve them better to be in the Europa League for a couple of years, to build a foundation, rebuild the reputation, build a European squad. They've built a Premier League squad that can do well in the league. Now, how about build a team that can actually compete in Europe and manage Europe and the Premier League at the same time, which is what they'll be doing next season. So, yeah, I'd be disappointed, of course, because the glamour is the Champions League, but there's a lot to look forward to. And it's not over yet. I don't think they will make the Champions League now, but it's not over. They could still make it. So, look, they've worked hard. They've earned a spot in European competition. I don't think they should be too downhearted if it doesn't end up being the Champions League.
Darren, how massive is it for a club like Nottingham Forest to reach European football? Does it matter that it wasn't the Champions League? I know it's not officially confirmed, but looks unlikely. If they're not in that top tier competition, Is it a blow when you think about the possibility of the Europa League, the Europa Conference League for a club like Nottingham Forest?
I think that the clue is in the question, because as far as they're concerned, they've won that competition when it was the European Cup. So they would want to be back there, and to be back there, given what Jordan had been saying a second ago about the predictions for them at the start of the season, it's a stuff of fantasy. I think it's kind of patronising to kind of pat them on the head and say you should be grateful for Europa League when they had Champions League in the palm of their hands. All they had to do to kind of get a step closer was to beat one of the worst teams in the Premier League, and they couldn't do it. And they've lost their form at the wrong time. I know the owner has had a lot of criticism, but I don't really see why. He's been criticised because we're not used to seeing the frustrations of clubs in real time with our own eyes. But we are used to shots of chairmen and owners in the stands, in directors' boxes, with a commentator saying, "I wonder what's going to happen then." And that's the way that kind of boardroom frustration is generally articulated to us. So we're not used to seeing it in real time. But what the owner did is no different from a chairman of a company going down onto the shop floor of an underperforming workforce and saying, "What's going on?" It might not be pretty, it might not be nice, it might have been quite unedifying for a nice guy like Nuno to have to suffer that indignity. But I'm not in the camp of all of those people hitting over the head and calling him a disgrace. We love a pantomime figure in football, and he's become one. But actually, he's an ambitious guy who wants the best for his football club. Nobody is saying that if Forest were to get into the Champions League, they're going to be regulars, they're going to win it, they're going to beat Real Madrid and Bayern Munich. But it is a game changer if they get into the Champions League in terms of the caliber of the player that they're able to attract. Who knows how much it will accelerate their plans going forward if they were to get into the Champions League. So the idea that people should ruffle their hair and say, "Don't worry, you did well to get into Europa League, you should be grateful with that," a little bit patronising for me.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm not. I'm sorry, Pooh. I'm not patronising them. I'm just merely saying that I think that it could be a blessing in disguise, and ultimately, you finish where you deserve to finish. They've had a brilliant season, but if they finish sixth, they deserve to finish sixth. That's where you know deserve to finish, and that it's not me ruffling their hair and saying well done, well done. It's me saying, look, you had a great season. It's tailed off. You know, you've done significantly more than anybody expected, so you've overachieved. I don't think it's a rude thing to say they've overachieved. They have overachieved. That's fine, but but that's not a bad thing. I think you take what you get in terms of where they finish in the league. They'll get what they deserve, and then let's build from there.
Yeah, no, listen, I
I
don't
also
disagree about that you finish where you deserve to finish. I totally agree, but that kind of isn't the question. The question is, um, should they be aggrieved at not finishing in the top five?
no, that's not the
Um,
question. The question is how
sorry,
big a
you
disappointment is it?
how big a
How big a
disappointment?
disappointment is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, it is a big disappointment. You've been in those top five positions for most of the season. You lose your form at the wrong time. Um, but my point is that you, Jordan, were saying that Europa League is still a good thing, and that missing out might be a blessing in disguise. I don't think they're going to see it that way in the short
No,
term.
not
It might
now.
well be the case in the longer term, but I don't
Yeah.
think they're going to see it that way. And I think I can understand why they wouldn't see it that way in the short term, because five places this time around, who knows when that opportunity might come again.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but yeah, and it would have been amazing for them to be in the Champions League for many reasons. Commercial, historical, memorable nights for the fans and stuff like that. But again, I don't want to disrespect the Europa League in terms of what Nottingham Forest might get out of it. They might still get incredible memories. As Jordan points out, they might actually lift a European trophy, which they're not going to do in the Champions League. So there may well still be some fantastic benefits for Nottingham Forest over the longer term. even if it's 2 years, 3 years, maybe they get into the Champions League for next season, having won the Europa League. Some footballers might say that's a better way of getting into the Champions League than finishing 5th in the Premier League, because you have those incredible memories, you have a medal round your neck, and then you go into the Champions League. And maybe you're more ready for it, having had that experience in European football. So I think there is a world where, over the longer term, this can still be, European football as a whole can still be a huge benefit for Nottingham Forest. I don't think it necessarily had to be Champions League right now. That could still well be in their future. As Jordan points out, if they recruit to a higher level, get some better players in who are more of a European standard, why can't they get to the Champions League next season and finish in the top 5 then? Go on, Jordan.
Can I just ask, sorry, Hugh, do you guys think that the brand of football they play, which has been successful this season, it's worked, but do you feel that brand of football will be attractive in the summer to trying to get certain players to join Forest?
Well, the thing about
Yeah.
trying to attract players is that, and also when you get to a summer, you reassess, because obviously if you feel that there is a high caliber of player that you can attract to the club, then you, as you should every season, I think, you look to go again and possibly in a different way, possibly change up the way you play. If you look at City, they won the title without a striker, and then they decided we want to change the way we play, so we'll go out and get Erling Haaland and play in a different way. And I think other clubs can do the same. So it's not necessarily the case that they're going to try and sell that brand of football to a higher caliber of player. It might be that they want a higher caliber of player and they're prepared to change to suit that kind of player that they want to bring in.
Let's just very quickly touch on the owner thing. I'll give you my opinion on it. I know you touched on it already, Darren. You said he's ambitious, and I just wanted to take a little bit of umbrage with that, because there's a suggestion in that the other owners who aren't on the pitch remonstrating with their managers aren't ambitious. Just because you're ambitious doesn't give you a right to. Firstly, I don't know why he's on the pitch ever, but he's done it many times during his career. He's gone on to remonstrate with officials before, coaches, players. Clearly he's got an eccentric personality and a bit of a temper problem. Let's be perfectly honest in terms of what we've seen with him in the past. That doesn't mean he's more ambitious because he's more willing to go on the pitch and remonstrate with people. I don't see it in that light. There are other clubs and other coaches who've underperformed. We haven't seen their owners or chairmen or chairpeople out on the pitch remonstrating with them. So, there's a time and a place, and I don't think on the pitch is the right time for that. Is it a disgrace? No, I agree with you on that. I don't think it's to that extreme point, but is it disrespectful? Yeah, it probably is disrespectful. The manager has done a lot for this team over the course of this season. He's brought you European football that will bring you tens of £1 million more than you were expecting. He has kept you in the Premier League. That's going to bring you £150 million. That there are many reasons to be thankful for what the manager has done. And I understand the form has tailed off in the latter part of the season. But again, like every team, there are reasons for that. And sometimes you can't be at your best for 38 games. You can't be at your best in every single game. Now, I get it. It's a poor result against Leicester City, but they're a Leicester City team playing for pride ultimately. There, of course, was the issue with the injury, which left Nottingham Forest basically a player light. And that's what Evangelos Marinakis said he was discussing with the manager. Fine, but it can wait. Let's be honest, it could have waited. And then there wouldn't have been any stories, any headlines, any statements coming out from the club if he could have just kept his cool and his calm. And unfortunately, he couldn't.
It was poor, man. I agree. I don't quite go as far as say it was a disgrace, but it was poor. This is a guy that likes attention. He wants attention. He knew what he was doing. He knew that how many cameras were in that building. He knew the focus on that particular match. He wants attention. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you on the pitch? I agree with you, Hugh. Do that behind the scenes. He embarrassed his manager. If I'm Nuno, I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What, because you're my boss, you get to come on the pitch and start remonstrating towards it? No, get out of my face, man. Let's talk later on. I know you're upset. I'm disappointed. I'm the one that's been here week in, week out, trying to get this team from relegation predictions to being, as Darren said, to maybe winning the title. Yeah, I'm. Trust me. There's no one here hurting more.
Win the title.
Sorry.
Don't
All right,
Don't even go there.
all right.
Trying to
But
kill him. Win the Champions League.
Exactly.
I'm the one. I've been here week in, week out. So there's no
You
one
tried
here
to sneak
hurting
that one in under the wire.
no one's hurting more than me. So for you to come out and embarrass me, like, what are you doing? That's the equivalent of me being in a newsroom and my editor coming over to me in front of the whole newsroom and saying, I don't know, why didn't you get that scoop before Darren Lewis? I've seen Darren Lewis on Sky Sports News breaking the story that blah, blah, blah. Why didn't you get it first? Yeah. No. Take me into your office. Let's have a conversation about what you think about my performance. And you can have it out with me, fine. But not in front of, 40,000 supporters and the world's cameras. Nah, man. He made it about him and he knew what he was doing.
No, listen, I just think that they are, I want to phrase it better than this, but they're almost old opinions in a new world. There are loads of people tut-tutting over what Marinakis did, but the bottom line is there are no rules anymore. We are in an era where people want to express themselves. Do I agree with what he did? No. Can I understand why he did it? Yes. And in any working relationship in life, you set boundaries for the way that you want to be treated. I do agree with that, Jordan. And I do agree that there should have been established boundaries between him and Nuno for when the right time is to address him, and in front of the world's media, in front of the fans, in front of the players, his players and opposition players. That's not the time to do it. I totally agree with that. But did he want to make it all about him? I don't necessarily agree with that. He is an ambitious businessman. He does have a big portfolio of clubs. He's tempted Eddie away from Arsenal to work within that portfolio of clubs. He is anxious to get Nottingham Forest to the next stage. He would be far from the first owner or chairman who is anxious to get their club to the next stage
Darren,
and make
Darren,
big demands of that manager. Sorry, Jordan.
Sorry to cut you, man. If you were Nuno Espirito Santos, would you have felt in that moment disrespected?
No, I totally agree with you. As I said before, yeah, I would.
So,
I would.
So if you agree that it was disrespectful, then he has made it about him. Because he knows what he's doing.
I don't know you can make that leap.
He knows what he's doing.
Well, clearly he knows what he's doing, but
Right.
he's not doing it for performative reasons. He's doing it because he is seeing a huge amount of commercial finance, kudos, the chance to play against some of the biggest clubs in Europe in the elite European competition go up in smoke. And if he had lost that game to Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, Aston Villa, I don't think he's on the pitch. But losing it to a Leicester side that really have been shocking this season, he's frustrated. And yeah, but the draw, they're relegated. They're relegated.
No, I'm just pointing out they didn't lose. I'm just pointing out for factual reasons that they didn't actually lose the game.
No, thank you for correcting me. Yes. But my point is they're relegated. And I think as far as he's concerned, he's frustrated. So I just, at the moment, we are in an era where it's a done thing to get as angry as possible and not see the shades of grey. Either you're on one side or the other. It's all very binary, and you can't sort of sit and think about, well, actually, this is the reason why, and the shades of grey. And I think there are shades of grey with this one.
Okay, up next on Whisper It Loudly, we have to talk politics. We have to talk about Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. Many of you, of course, will be disappointed with how they've started their time in office. But I think the bigger story that's developing at the moment is Keir Starmer is moving into the right, into the space on the right. Clearly, as we saw in the local elections, as we've seen from recent polling, Reform UK under Nigel Farage look very popular for the British public at the moment. Whether that would transition itself to a general election, I don't know. But clearly the noises from the polls are, we like what Reform are saying. Now, we expect the Conservative Party, who are already quite far to the right, to be perfectly honest, to move in that direction. to try and gain votes moving forward. They don't want to lose natural Tory voters to the Reform Party. But it's not something we expected from Labour to do to try and get votes from Reform. But judging from what we've been hearing, it seems like they are moving that way. Employers who want to employ what they've described as lower skilled workers, heard that before, on a temporary basis, have to demonstrate they are also training and recruiting UK workers. The Home Secretary saying 180 occupations will be removed from the list of shortages in the UK, the shortfall to be filled by training schemes to fill the gaps with homegrown workers. Questions around how many training schemes will actually marry up with business needs now. That's one concern. But they are also closing the specific care worker visa. That has led to the loudest alarm bell so far. Many in the sector desperate about the pre-existing staffing shortfalls, unconvinced by government advice that they should recruit from a pool of around 10,000 UK workers already in the country on care visas. The government is determined to try and take the economy away from its dependence on overseas labour. Now, they can do that, but it wouldn't be good for the pound. It certainly wouldn't. That's what the economists are saying. So now we as a country have to weigh up whether we want the economy to get worse or whether we want lower immigration. And it feels like it's been a big conversation for the last 20 years. People do want lower net migration. The increase has been pretty staggering. Before Brexit, before Brexit, not breakfast, the highest figure was 329,000 in the year up to June of 2015. In 2023, the annual number over 900,000. Last year, that figure fell to 728,000. That's because of restrictions that were already brought in on dependents for care and student visas. The number still, though, very high. The rhetoric taking back control of our borders used by Keir Starmer this week, something that was quite prevalent during the Brexit campaign, set a few alarm bells ringing for many. Even that talk around low-skilled migration. And Starmer tweeting yesterday, if you want to live in the UK, you should speak English. That's common sense. So we know where Labour are moving right now, something we didn't expect. But what does it mean for the Labour Party moving forward? And what does it mean for the country moving forward? Those are the questions I'm asking. Darren Lewis, you can begin.
So Keir Starmer sounded like a former Southampton chairman on Monday with that tweet about if you want to stay in England, you've got to speak English. And I, to be really frank, I wonder where Sir Keir Starmer goes from here, because I think in relation to trying to relate to the diversity of this country, he's done. He's done. Last June, he was talking about too many Bangladeshis in this country, a section of the community that contribute £250 million to the economy. This time around, well, the rhetoric is there for all to see. And it's funny because I did a column on this for the Daily Mirror, which is out on Tuesday. And I wrote about the fact that very soon after Starmer's speech on Monday morning had ended, Enoch Powell was trending on social media because people had made connections between lines in Starmer's speech and the kind of rhetoric that they'd heard from Enoch Powell in that famous Rivers of Blood speech. And the bottom line is that it's the kind of thing, what we heard on Monday, that we expect to, well, we did hear from the Tories. We talked about our disgust and concern at that language. We saw it led last summer. And now we're hearing similar language from Starmer. And it has to be said, there are people within Starmer's Labour Party who are unhappy at that language. So I'm not tying everybody with the same brush, but the fact is that that language from a guy who well, first of all, he's a human rights lawyer. Second of all, he's a guy who did all the performative allyship 5 years ago, took the knee, says all the right things, sends his cabinet ministers off to diverse areas of the country when he needs their votes, pledged to fight on behalf of people who look like us at the last general election. And now he's sounding like a candidate for reform. And I really don't see where he goes from here. I do wonder whether he will be in charge of his own party by the time they get to the next election, because he had a choice. He could have stuck by his principles, or he could have pivoted to the right. And he chose to pivot to the right to try to mimic the kind of thing that we're hearing from Nigel Farage. And he's almost normalizing Farage by saying, I see the next election as being between me and him. And he's bringing this guy with his extreme politics into the mainstream. And I know I want to give you guys a chance to talk on this. So I'll just say one more thing. I saw his Undersecretary for Migration, Seema Malhotra, doing a round of interviews on Monday, not answering any questions, just blustering out the kind of pre-prepared guff, really, that she had to try and legitimize the policy. And it just struck me that this is where we are, where guys like Starmer, we saw it with Boris Johnson, who had Priti Patel as his Home Secretary, and, you know, they get somebody who is a brown woman, a black man, to legitimize the xenophobic rhetoric and policy that targets our parents, our grandparents, and I'm not talking in the dim and distant past, I'm talking within our lifetime, and makes life difficult for them. And then, well, certainly somebody like Starmer will come out and still claim to be the leader of the party that fights for us. I think he's done out here.
For me, it wasn't a surprise to hear the rhetoric and the language used and the direction that Keir Starmer's going down. What's interesting to me is I don't understand what the win is here for this particular direction. There's lots of parallels with the Democratic Party in the United States in that with this sort of direction of travel in trying to appease the right, you're not only losing your core voter base on the left, but you're never going to get those on the right anyway. So it's a lose-lose. It's a lose-lose. If you're going to lose an election or if you're going to be voted out of government, at least go out with your core values and your core voter base intact. Cool. We didn't win, but at least we can say we stuck to what we believe in and we were outnumbered with the votes. Fine. We'll come again. We'll find other ways to try and build our base and build the trust of what we're trying to implement in government. But by doing what he's doing, we all know, we all know people, well, I've got people in my family that are saying, I'm never voting Labour again. I'm never voting Labour again. That's what they're saying to me. So you're not only shedding the people that are meant to be your team, but you've got the people you're appeasing to that are never going to come to your tent. They're not voting for you, bro. So you might as well forget those guys, even if it is the growing majority, and stand firm. Because if what you're doing says to me that in 20, 30 years' time, you might not have a party because you haven't attracted new voters, but you've lost your current voters. So the strategy for me is really, really bizarre. We had the skills minister on Channel 4 News last night, and she was talking about, the skills that, we need people in this country to do these jobs, and care workers, you mentioned, Hugh, and all these jobs. And she was just, I'm sorry, but there was a lot of waffle. There was a lot of non-answering of the questions. There was a lot of answering the questions that she'd prepared in her mind rather than answering Christian's actual questions. And I just thought to myself, we've discussed it before, but the caliber of politicians we've got, for me, just isn't particularly great. And the direction for people like us, who, the three of us, we are left, center left, I think it's concerning because if the person, as you mentioned, Dan, is supposed to be championing people like us and our values and our politics, is now quite clearly parroting the rhetoric and the language of his opponents and those on the opposite side of the fence. As you say, Darren, we are done out here. We are done out here. And just my final point in regards to what was announced in terms of, care workers, the stats are out there. The people in this country that are from this country don't want to do those jobs. Now, we can discuss whether that's a bad thing or a good thing, whatever. But the fact is, those jobs have got to be done. So when you start getting rid of all these people or making it significantly harder for Nigerians to come into to Polish to come into the country, when you make it harder for them, who's doing these jobs? I don't know anybody that is in a care home at the moment. I don't have any relatives to my knowledge, but someone's got to care for these people. And I want to know who's going to do that, because the people in this country en masse, they don't want to do it. And an interesting point, finally, it was made by an interviewee we had on the program yesterday who worked in a care home or ran a care home. She said, it's not a normal job. It's not a job. It's not like a cool job where you go, you do your job and you go. You need a particular type of person that sees it, not just a job. They don't get paid very well. This is not a job where you're going to get rich. So you need a certain type of person to be a care worker. So if you're running out the people that actually want to, I don't want to do that job. It's not, doesn't play to my character. I don't want to do that job. So, but I want people who do want to do that job. And if you're making it hard for those kind of people to come in the country and do that job, then I dread to fear where we're going to go. And then you put Brexit on top of that. That's more immigrants that you. So I don't know where we're going, but it doesn't look good.
Can I just say before you come in, Hugh? There's a couple of really important points that Jordan was made, and we are not talking about people who are coming over on boats and dinghies and whatnot. We're talking about people who are here legally, people who have come here, contributed to this country. This whole white paper is designed to cut those people even further. And that's a really important point also that Jordan made. The Care Association reckons that there's a gap of about 130,000 people, 131 actually, thousand people. The jobs that are just there that people don't want to take. And even before this show, I was doing a school run. I was listening to the radio, and there were so many people who were coming on to a phone-in that was being held and saying, my workforce is, this one particular woman, she said her workforce was 32 strong. 32 of them were immigrant workers. They come, they work incredibly hard. And the guy says, she said, forgive me, people talk about, well, get people who are British to do that job. I advertised for a year and couldn't fill those positions. And she said, we pay above minimum wage. The work, as you said, Jordan, is incredibly hard and dedicated. But these people who I've employed are such fantastic workers. They relate so well to the parents. They give to the patients. And they give the level of care that they should become accustomed to. And we are back in the 70s, 60s, where we have a situation that historically has never really been resolved, where our parents came to this country to do jobs that people did not want to do. And it's remarkable that we are 50 years on, 60 years on, and we are in a similar situation. But the difference being that the socialist government, which at the time fought for the rights and against the xenophobia that our parents suffered from, that socialist government is basically pivoting to the right in a desperate bid to reclaim power. But as Jordan says, there is no win for them. And there isn't even a win for us as well, because if I hear all the time people saying, I'll never vote Labour again, that's not a good thing. Because effectively, we are then left in the grip of the Tories, reform. Where does that take us? How does that help us? And that's what we should be equally concerned about.
I know there are a lot of people that think Reform UK is growing. that they're going to win the next election, that it would be great for the country. Just a quick point on what we said already. What was announced, what has been announced. It's not going to be cataclysmic for the economy, but we're going to be a smaller economy than we are now. So anyone that thought Brexit was a big negative for the economy, it's not going to be as bad, but it's going to be bad. So half as bad, I imagine. The pound will not be as strong. Okay, that's as simple as I can put it. The pound will not be as strong. Immigration is a big part of keeping our economy. Numbers of populations a big part of keeping our economy where it is. All this stuff about low skilled workers and stuff like that doesn't make much sense because those are the workers that you need. There was a part of me listening to the speech where I thought, this is Labour's great, clever plan. What they're going to do is they're going to employ people who they currently say aren't working because they're work shy to take care of themselves. So that's going to be, we don't have to pay them benefits. We'll just get them jobs to be carers for themselves. Like, it's almost like I was like, that's the only way that this plan could possibly work. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. It's just all in all a negative. I don't know what the economists say about it, but to me, it makes absolutely no sense other than it wins you votes. Possibly, again, I agree with everything you said so far. You're not taking votes off Reform UK. And the strangest thing to me is that if you let Reform and the Conservative Party fight over the votes on the right, they might kill each other. In which case, if you just really strongly represent everyone else, you've actually got a much better chance of being re-elected. So it makes zero political sense to me either. It just, the math ain't mathing. It just makes no sense. Let them squabble over the stuff about immigration and whatnot. You do your thing. But we're now with a prime minister who changes his mind, U-turns, flip-flops, and it looks like a bit of a. It's not even a meek character, but he's a person who, for whatever you want to say about the other politicians, they're pretty firm on who they are. And this is a person who started on the left, who's now moving to the right, who probably would say he's centre right, for whom some of his politics is here, some of it's here, some of it's here. This is not the kind of politician that's going to get elected. As we've seen across the world, you need to be X. And when people go into that ballot box, they know what they're getting. They know what it says on the tin. And he at the moment is not that kind of politician.
Yeah, I saw yesterday, I was trying to remember who it was, but one of his Muslim female MPs, she tweeted yesterday about saying, look, I voted against disability cuts, welfare cuts, the 2-child benefit cap, because I didn't become a politician to basically go along with the prevailing wind. I became a politician to fight for my people, for my constituents, and I stand by my principles. And I don't care that they've booted me out of the cabinet or the party. I'm still going to continue to do that. Now, that's what you call principle. I think we're not seeing that right now. And I think even people who are not black, brown, even people who are not, part of those communities are looking at what's going on and they're saying this is not the Labour that we voted for.
Okay, this week we wanted to bring in a guest for you. It's been a while since guest on the Whisper It Loudly podcast, but we thought this one was very important indeed. So let's say hello to Dylan White from Blanco Activities, who's joined us to kind of talk about mentoring and how we can help young people. Very important topic. Dylan, how are you? Firstly, let me ask you, tell us how you started your company and what exactly you try and achieve.
First of all, good morning, guys. It's a pleasure to be on the show. To answer your question, as you know, young people these days need a path and a direction and a sense of belonging in order to kind of reach their goals. And some of them might not have that opportunity, or they might not have the voice. So as ambassadors or role models, we have to kind of pave the way for them to give them that voice and that sense of belonging to get into the direction they want to go. So yeah, it's been a long marathon, and it's funny because I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and one of the older people that I was there listening to, he turned around and said, 20 years. He was like, 20 years for me to get where I am. And it's funny because I kind of related to what he says, because when I'm speaking to my coaches and the young people, they look at me and they think I'm the finished article. And little do they know, like, I'm still chipping away to create this better person and version of myself. And I used to say to them, I'm like, guys, 10 years for me to get where I am, to be speaking to you, to pass all this information down, this wisdom. But as you know, the youth today, they want it fast, they want it easy. They're not really focused on the long run, the longevity to get where they want to be. They're looking at others, comparing themselves to people that are 10, 15, 20 years older. And that's kind of how we need to tackle the mindset on how they think and how they act, and say, look, it is okay to take your time. You can't get it right now. As much as you want it right now, it's going to take time. So I think my passion lies with trying to get young people to change their mindset on how they outlook on things in today's
Dylan.
society.
You know, the importance of a mentor in one's life, I think, is very, very valuable. From what you've seen doing your work, why do you think it's so key?
As you said, just echoing to what you said, everyone's upbringing is different. So we're not aware of the child's situation at home. Some young people might not have a father figure in their life. They might not have someone to follow in that positive direction. So I do believe, like, just the presence alone, like, I've been taught to kind of listen to the young people, because not a lot of young people get heard, and kind of be a voice for them and try to echo. That's why I kind of put myself in a position, because I'm trying to be a voice for many young people that don't get the chance to speak or even be heard. And I think the platform that I've got and what I've kind of used and how I've developed over the years, I need to connect with like-minded people like yourselves to kind of amplify what I'm doing in the communities. And it's me and many others that kind of need to work together to reach the bigger goal. And just answering your question, a young person needs to have that right guidance in their life to steer them in that right direction, because they're making a lot of silly mistakes at a young age, which is having an impact on their future. If we have the right person or people in place to work with these young people, just to say, look, don't do that, or don't say that, or don't go there. Trust me, I've got a plan for you. Let's see how we can figure this out and work together to get to the same goal.
Dylan, are you a solo youth worker then, or do you have an organisation? Just give us a bit more detail about how you operate.
Yeah, so I actually work for a charity in Edmonton called Edmonton Community Partnership. There's two mentors. There's myself and a female mentor that I work in 5 schools. I believe that she's in another 5, but we're a partner of 21 schools. So I go in, let's say, for example, today I'm at Wilbury Primary School. I'll go in and I'll work with 3 young people for the day. Obviously, referral forms come in. Won't go obviously into detail, but I will read that. I will say, okay, this person needs some support in confidence or character building, or maybe socializing more in a group. And then I'll use maybe my experiences and some resources to kind of put them in a better position. How I use it, I go in with a tool bag. I say, look, here's my tool bag. I've got all my tools in it. At the minute, you've got a tool bag with no tools in. Let's see how we can work together to give you the tools that you need to take your next step in that direction. And then after that period, once I've had this weekly mentoring sessions with the young person, they won't need me anymore. Then I can go on to the next person, and I can keep going, providing them with the right tools to make the right steps to put them in the right position in life.
How do you combat the fights for young people's attention to try and get their focus away from, you mentioned it earlier on, the hard, fast gratification of what they see on social media versus having them, put in the work and the time to try and achieve something as young people? What are the ways in which you use social media, even for positive? How difficult a battle is social media in getting their attention? Sorry, it's 4 questions in there, but I think you can
Yeah,
understand the general thrust of what I'm
it's
asking you.
I do believe that this is one challenge that we're all facing. As an uncle, which I am, obviously as a parent, which most of us are, as brothers and everything like that. Like, we are tackling this social media crisis, and we have a lot of positive people in this space that they're following, but we also have a lot of people that are making the wrong decisions and saying the wrong things, and all of these young people are following them. So, to answer your question, how do we balance out the playing field? So one of the things that I've done is, I understand that a young person needs a sense of belonging, okay? And whether it's a material thing, or even, I took 3 of my young people that I mentor, 15-year-olds and 16-year-old, to Nando's last night after the session. I enjoyed the session that they delivered. I wanted to say thank you. I didn't want to turn around and say, "Oh, I appreciate the session. Boys, appreciate the work. Let's go to Nando's." So I do believe that there are a lot of positive people on social media, but there's a lot more that are steering these young people in the wrong direction. And let's just go back to, obviously, when you said, how do I manage it? So, uniform, for example. So, if this young person feels a part of the team by wearing a Blanco t-shirt, trousers, they're a part of something now. Okay. With that, it comes, there's code of conduct. There's things that you got to follow. If you're not upkeeping what the policy says, then you're going against what we're trying to achieve here. So it comes down to how you carry yourself outside of the organization. Obviously, they're working in, they're in schools at the minute still. So what they post on social media, if it ever was to come out, for example, they're recording a fight or something in school, that goes against the code of conduct. So it's all those little things that I've planted into their brain to say, do you know what, I'm not going to do that, because it's going to have an impact on my position in the organization. So it's them small things I'm still working on. I'm still trying to take things from people and adapt it into my own setting. But the more I learn, the more I'm going to be able to pass down to the young people that I'm working with.
Just finally, before you leave us, I know you're very busy and you're just about to go into a session. Um, I know that you personally run a company where this can continue outside of term time for kids as well. They can come and experience some sort of mentoring, something to keep them busy during the summer. So tell people where they can find you, where they can find your business.
Yeah, so we're located at Highland Secondary School. It's N21 1QQ. That's one of our bases. The other one is at Hansfield Primary School, just off Hertford Road. There are 2 main locations. So yeah, look, there's a lot of young people that are reaching out over the summer to see if they can get work, and if they do want to, if they are serious, then most definitely reach out. So it's Blanco Activities on Instagram, and then our website, you can go on www.blancoactivitiesltd.com.
Dylan, really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Really informative and important conversation that we've had. Really, really appreciate it. That wraps up the podcast for today. So just before we go, to let you know, give us a follow on the Whisper It Loudly social media stages. Check out Blanco Activities as well, of course. If you've got any feedback, any responses, put them down in the comments and we'll try and get back to you as soon as we possibly can. And we'll see you again next week. Take care.